There is enough. That's how we start every day at Asheville Poverty Initiative's 12 Baskets Cafe. There is enough. The problem isn't that there's not enough. The problem isn't scarcity. The problem is that we're living in systems that operate out of a mentality of scarcity rather than recognizing the truth of abundance. At 12 Baskets Cafe, we serve a free lunch 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, using 100% already prepared rescued food. That means we travel around to local restaurants and grocery stores, and we pick up the food that they would otherwise throw away, bring it back to the cafe, and we serve, on average, over 100 folks a day. Now notice I mentioned 100 folks. We're not even talking about servings. And we have 6 freezers on site. We pick up from 7 locations weekly, and those 6 freezers are completely full. In fact, just last month, we received a call from a local restaurant who wanted us to come and start picking up 4 days a week, and if we could, to please start picking up that very day. And when we inquired why the urgency, they told us that they were trying to keep from having to rent their 4th dumpster because of food waste. Now, a recent study out of Johns Hopkins University reveals that 84% of the United States population could eat a 2,000 calorie diet off of only food that is currently being thrown away. 84% of the population of the United States, not 84% of people who are living in poverty, 84% of all of us could eat and eat well off of only food that is currently ending up in a landfill. Now hold that over here while we compare it with the statistics of the most recent survey from Feeding America, which shows that 1 out of every 6 children in the United States faces hunger. That's 13 million children in our country who are food insecure. And if that's not staggering enough, listen to this statistic. Nearly 30% of families whose income is over the federal poverty line is also food insecure. So doesn't it make sense that we should find ways to pair the resources and the need together? That's what we attempt to do at 12 Baskets Cafe. And if addressing hunger is not enough to pay attention to this model, think about the implications. Think for a moment about the resources that could be redirected from addressing issues of hunger to things like affordable housing and mental health and transportation by simply using the resources that are being thrown away to address hunger. We could minimize the amount of money, energy, and volunteer hours that go in to actually trying to make sure that everybody gets fed and use them in areas that actually need those resources while we aren't wasting the resources to make sure people are fed. Now, the name 12 Baskets comes from a story found in the Bible. I am a minister. Did y'all really think y'all were going to get out of this without a little Jesus? And it's a rather familiar story. It's about one where Jesus is talking to a big crowd, a multitude. Some accounts say 5,000 or so. And the story goes a little something like this. Jesus is out in the countryside, and he's talking to all of these people, and it's getting dusk. The disciples approach him and say, "You need to send these folks home. They're getting hungry." And Jesus turns to his disciples and says, "No, you feed them." And the disciples turn to Jesus and say, "Do what?" It's true. It's in Scripture. The Shannon paraphrase anyway. And at that time, A little child approaches Jesus and hands him a basket that contains 2 fish and 5 loaves. Now, traditionally, the church has interpreted this story as a miracle story that happens only vertically. Jesus takes the basket, says a prayer, God poofs it, and it becomes enough to feed 5,000. Could it have happened that way? Maybe. I wasn't there. But I wonder if actually what really happened was that Jesus' message of loving one another and caring for one another actually inspired everybody in that multitude, that when that basket got passed, they began to pull from their own pockets and put it in the baskets. And that when everybody shared what they had, there was enough to go around, and everyone had their fill, and there was still 12 baskets of broken pieces left over. We believe at 12 Baskets, we bear witness to this abundance, not only in the food that we distribute, but also the way that it gets distributed. Because unlike many food distribution services, we don't operate in such a way that it's one population serving another. It's truly a cafe model, where we are open to the public and we invite and even encourage folks from all walks of life, from all socioeconomic realities, to come in and share a meal. And in that way, using little to no new resources, we can begin to dismantle the stereotypes and stigmas that develop based on the worth and identity a person gets labeled by what they materially own or what they materially lack. We want to begin to step outside of the false binaries of the haves and the have-nots, believing that those labels really only breed misinterpretation and fear of the other. Whereas a mentality of scarcity breeds fear and competition, a mentality of abundance encourages collaboration and reduces the anxiety and the trauma that comes from never having enough. So whether a person lives in a tent or a house, they are invited to come and participate and share what they have to make the cafe all that it can be. In fact, the very first day that we opened, it was just myself and our intern, Andy, and neither one of us knew what we were doing. We simply showed up, had collected some food, we popped it in a convection oven that I purchased off of Craigslist. And people started to come in about 9:30 while the food was heating up, and I turned to Andy and said, well, I guess we should make ourselves some coffee. And he said, that's a good idea, why don't you get on it? And I said, well, I don't know how. And he said, well, I don't either. And we just kind of stood there looking at this 3-burner commercial bun coffee maker when a guy 3 times my size, tattoos, earrings, a fella that 2 years ago I truthfully would have crossed the street to avoid, overheard our conversation, deeply sighed, rolled his eyes, and said, I'll make the coffee. And he did. And we learned his name is Thorn. And he lives in a tent. The cafe not only bears witness to the truth of abundance in food, but also in the truth that there is no such thing as only a have or only a have-not. At the end of the day, each and every one of us is both. And that is something we get to celebrate at the table where it's an ultimate equalizer. Several days ago, a woman by the name of Derry, she comes and eats lunch with us at least weekly. She's housed and recently retired, and she drives in to join us for lunch. As she was leaving, she asked if she could have a hug. I said, sure. So we hugged. And as we embraced, I noticed that she was crying. And I said, Derry, is everything okay? And she said, you know, I can afford food. I said, okay. She said, I don't come because I can't afford it. I come because I'm tired of eating alone. I come because when I need a hug at my house, there's nobody to give me one. The poet, farmer, author, Wendell Berry never inked truer words than these. What we have is enough. What we have is enough. 12 Baskets Cafe is a model that illustrates that in food and in love, in companionship, in friendship. It is a model that we believe can go nationwide, maybe even globally, because it tells the truth of abundance. And if you don't believe me, come on over to the cafe and experience it for yourself. Because y'all, the truth is, there is enough. Enough for all of us. Thank you.